This year, most of us won't gather in person. We'll celebrate Easter online or create rituals within our own homes. But the fear, sorrow, and shock we feel in the face of COVID-19 will stay with us. What does it mean to celebrate resurrection when people are dying by the thousands? What good can it do to insist that the tomb is empty when body bags are in short supply, mortuaries are overrun, and mourners can't gather to bury their dead? I'm scared, grieving, and struggling. I believe that Christ is risen, but there's so much else I don't know right now. What makes sense to me is to stay close to the story, to the messy, chaotic, and barely comprehensible story. Scattered grave clothes, confused running, and timid peeks into empty tombs, tears and uncertainty, faith waiting in the shadows for courage and insight. Mary Magdalene discovers the empty tomb before sunrise, while it's still dark, when it was hard to be sure what you were seeing. The story tells us that the disciples stumbled around in the half-light on the third day after Jesus' crucifixion, running here and there in their confusion. Were those really angels sitting in the unlit tomb? Were those misshapen shadows that were Jesus' grave clothes? The stranger lingering outside with the oddly familiar voice, was he a gardener or someone else? Why can't the promise of Easter come to us in blazing sunlight with unmistakable clarity? Why all this stumbling around in the darkness? Why so much bewilderment? Maybe death is such an abyss, such a horror, such a violation that only a mystery as profound as resurrection in the dark will suffice. Over these past few months, we've seen death magnified, exceeding all of the boundaries we try to impose on it. Maybe we need mystery right now. Mystery commensurate to a world reeling in loss. Angels in murky places. A stranger's voice revealing the divine. Maybe we need God who dwells in light so bright and so unapproachable to cover us in merciful darkness, to protect our fragile sight. For me, clarity, hope, and healing come often when I'm willing to linger in hard, barren places, places where the usual platitudes fall flat and easy answers prove inadequate. Jesus comes in the darkness, and sometimes it takes a long time to recognize him. He doesn't look the way I expect him to look. He doesn't let me cling to my old ideas of him. He disappears again just as I grab hold of him. But he comes, nevertheless, and he calls my name, even when I'm lost in grief. And in that instant, I recognize both myself and him. There's so much about the resurrection that we don't know. What we do know is that somehow, in an ancient tomb on a starry night, God worked in secret to bring life out of death. Somehow, in utter darkness, God saved the world. The beloved disciple entered the tomb after Peter, saw Jesus' linen wrappings lying in the place where a body should have been, and believed without understanding. It's not clear from the text what he believed or how deeply. Did he believe that Jesus' body had been stolen? Did he embrace the possibility that Jesus was alive? That God had vanquished death? We don't know. We only know that he saw and believed. He gave himself over without cynicism or despair to whatever messy faith was possible in the moment. And then he left the door open for his faith to deepen. He believed as he could, trusted as he could, no more, no less. I believe, but I don't understand. I believe in the resurrection, but I don't understand death's ongoing cruelty. I believe that Christ reigns, but I don't understand the elusive nature of his kingdom. I believe that all things will be well, but I don't understand why they're not all well now. Poet R.S. Thomas writes in his poem, The Answer, "There have been times when, after long on my knees in a cold chancel, a stone has rolled from my mind, and I have looked in and seen the old questions lie folded and in a place by themselves, like the piled grave clothes of love's risen body." Both the angels and the gardener ask Mary why she's so desperately sad. Mary Magdalene sees Jesus because she stays put in the place where her pain is. She stands and weeps, giving the grief and agony of her circumstances their due. Peter and the beloved disciple leave when they see the empty tomb. But Mary stays, bewildered, bereft. She refuses to abandon what is real, even when what's real is unbearable. The question is offered to Mary 2 times, giving her ample opportunity to express her pain. Why are you weeping? What is it that you have lost? What are you seeking? What has caused you to linger at the grave? What is breaking your heart? There's not a better question for the time and place we find ourselves in right now. Why are we weeping? Are we weeping for someone who's died of the coronavirus? Are we weeping because we can't be there after they die to support one another in our loss? Are we weeping in fear that we or someone we love might contract it? Are we sad because we've lost our job? Are we grieving for the unemployed and uninsured? Are we in tears because the world has changed and our place in it feels newly uncertain or shaky? Are we grieving because our faith isn't sustaining us as well as we thought it would? Are we sad because we miss the weekly comforts of church, communion, ritual, and community? Are we crying because we're lonely? Are we weeping for our children or grandchildren who must inherit a world so filled with pain? Why are we weeping? To ask this question and to answer it honestly is not faithless. It's truthful and loving. It's a place to begin. Now we'll stop and you can go to the second audio.